Hello everybody, welcome back to Let's Read a Game of Thrones, where I don't actually read Game of Thrones on camera, but I do discuss the chapter in a chapter-by-chapter review of the story. This time, I'm coming at you with the first Catelyn Stark chapter, which is the second overall chapter in the book. Let's get into it. Alright, spoilers, duh! You've been warned again and again. Spoilers, don't watch this video if you haven't read the books and you don't want to be spoiled, or go watch the show, read the books, and then come back, and then please watch my video. Alright, so what is a Let's Read? You've heard it before from me if you watch my first two videos, but it is similar to a Let's Play, but I read the books off screen and do commentary and analysis on camera. Now, this is the first Catelyn Stark chapter of George R.R. Martin's A Game of Thrones. You can look down below in the description for more information about the book and some other fun little things down there about this video. This video will contain a plot synopsis, character overviews, themes, topics, and symbols, and more. Alright everybody, let's start by talking about the synopsis of this very first Catelyn Stark chapter. If you're new here, I like to break my chapters down by the who, what, when, where, and why, followed by some plot points that are major to the story. Alright, so we're going to start off by talking about the who. We have Catelyn Stark, Eddard Stark, and Ice. Though Ice is not a sentient being, it is a sword that is discussed almost as much as Ned, if not more than Ned, in this chapter. Probably not more, that's a little bit insane, but it takes a lot of the viewpoint in the story. Not the viewpoint. Catelyn Stark, speaking of viewpoint, is our viewpoint character, as you've probably discerned by the title of the chapter. We have the what. Catelyn has bad news for Ned. We learn that Ned has a nickname. She calls him Ned. We don't know if others call him Ned just yet, but she calls him Ned, so that's what we're gonna start calling him from now on in this series. And the two of them have sort of a bedside conversation in this chapter. It's the end of the day, as we know by the when. Presumably it's the same day they found the direwolves. We don't have any evidence to support otherwise, and the two of them just sort of have a conversation. You know, how was your day? How are the kids? You know, I found that to be very fascinating. We have the where is in a God's Wood in Winterfell. We're going to talk more about the God's Wood later on in this video, but they are in the God's Wood in Winterfell, and Catelyn does not like this place, and given that she's the viewpoint character, that's sort of the view that we see of it. The setting is described as being surrounded by twisted trees and bleeding creeks, and you know, it's not a very pleasing place to be from her point of view. We have the why. The why is that the news that Catelyn has for Ned is important, and it is going to change their lives. If Ned is the hero of the story, which has yet to be determined, this news could be symbolic of his call to adventure, but it could also be the call to adventure for some of the other characters should they be the hero. Catelyn, who is a viewpoint character, the second one, in fact, or the third if you count the prologue, it could be her call to adventure, which I think is very crucial to discuss. We have the plot points. Catelyn meets Ned in the Godswood, and then Catelyn and Ned talk to each other, which is, you know, that's what they do, they talk. And then Catelyn delivers the news, and the news is that King Robert Baratheon is coming, followed by, or preceded by, the news that Jon's father figure, good friend, Jon Arryn, is dead. Alright, so I'm going to do this section of the video a little bit differently than the first two videos. Catelyn as a viewpoint character knows a lot about history and religion, and I suspect that she is going to be our character to sort of give us the knowledge on that front. So I wanted to talk about the history that we learn through this chapter. We learn a character named, well, maybe not a character, but you know, a historical figure named Brandon the Builder, who set the first stones. We find that out on page 23. We can discern that maybe Bran was named after Brandon the Builder, and Ned Stark is a descendant of Bran the Builder. We learn more evidence of the age of heroes when the Starks were considered the king in the north. we get more evidence of magic creatures. If the others are, then the children can be. They talk a lot about the children of the forest and the others in this chapter. Ned and Catelyn do when they're having their conversation, but Ned sort of writes it off as stories of old non. But we have seen in the prologue that the others do exist, which gives us slight evidence that the children might also exist. Here there's this quote: "The others are as dead as the children of the forest, gone 8,000 years, but we know that they are not." Children of the forest and the first men. More about children of the forest and the first man. It was said that the children of the forest had carved the faces in the trees during the dawn centuries before the coming of the first men across the narrow sea. So we just get some more information about them. And also knows a great deal about religion. She herself is of the faith, which we're going to discuss later in the Catelyn Stark character overview section. But we have two separate types of religion that we see in this chapter. We have the 7 gods, anointed with the 7 oils named in the rainbow of light that filled the sept of River Run. She was of the faith, like her father and grandfather and his father before him. Her gods had names, and their faces were as familiar as the faces of her parents. Worship was a septon with a censer, the smell of incense, a 7-sided crystal alive with light, voices raised in song. The Tullys kept God's wood, as all the great houses did, but it was only a place to walk or read or lie in the sun. Worship was for the sept. And then remember in an earlier chapter we had a character, I believe it was Theon, saying 7 hells, which sort of ties into the 7 gods. 7 gods, 7 hells, maybe. And then we also talk about the old gods in this, or we don't talk about it, but we should talk about the old gods, which are brought up in this chapter. In the Winterfell Godswood, the gods who lived here, Winterfell Godswood, had no names. His own gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of the Greenwood. They shared with the vanished children of the forest. So we can already see that the old gods sort of go back into those magical creatures. They're a little bit more mysterious, unlike the 7 gods who have faces, who Catelyn can think about what they look like in her opinion, or what has been taught to her, the images that she has been presented with. We don't know necessarily that she has seen a 7 god. Maybe she has. We don't know that information from her chapter. But we know that the old gods have no faces. They are more mysterious than the 7 gods, at least as how they are presented to us now. But they have more of a connection to those magical creatures, the faceless gods of the Greenwood. They shared the forest with the children, who are these sort of extinct creatures that we are probably going to learn more about by reading on. So what do we learn in this chapter, outside of some of the historical context or some of the religious aspects of the setting? We learn more about the Godswood, which tie back into that religion. The Godswood is comprised of these things called weirwood trees. The weirwood's bark was white as bone, its leaves dark red, like 1,000 blood-stained hands. A face had been carved in the trunk of the great tree, its features long and melancholy, the deep-cut eyes, red with dried sap and strangely watchful. Here we see eyes. Again, we're going to talk about eyes when we get to the themes, topics, and symbols section. But the weirwood trees are sort of these ancient trees that hold a significant religious meaning to the characters. Catelyn discusses her Godswood from the homeland that she is from in Riverrun, and how it's sort of this magical place. You would think of the forest in something like a Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella, where she's singing to the birds, ah, and that sort of thing. But the Godswood in Winterfell is nothing like that. It is completely darker, it's wet, moist. The trees are described as twisted, and it's just not the same kind of place. And they're used for different things. Ned is going there for solace, whereas for her religion, the faith of the 7, if you will, she uses the Godswood as a place to just walk and see, but she uses the sept to pray. And we learn that every Godswood, which is comprised of whatever trees, has a heart tree, and the heart tree has a face, and the faces were discussed as being carved in by the children of the forest. Then we have some sort of concept of religion fading, in the world, which is hinted by this line: in the South, the last weirwoods had been cut down. Man has to cut down, or burned out 1,000 years ago. Excuse me. Except on the Isle of Faces, where the green men kept their silent watch. So we don't really know much about the green men, but we know that they keep watch on the Isle of Faces, and presumably we'll learn more about that as we go through the story as well. But it's interesting thinking about man versus nature, again, as discussed in the prologue video, but not really later in this particular chapter, which I should have done. There is the physical man versus nature when they're cutting down trees, and also a little bit of man versus religion, because they're cutting down trees that have such religious meaning to the lives of the characters. Alright, we also learn a few more small things. We learn that every noble has words associated with their house. In the case of the Starks, the words are winter is coming. Now, everybody in the world knows that winter is coming. Game of Thrones is such a popular show that winter is coming has become such a meme online. Everyone says it, but many people don't know that it is they are the words of the Stark house. We get more information on banners, which I find very fascinating. The Eerie banners, Moon and Falcon. That's what we are given about that banner. And we'll learn more about the Eerie at least a little bit later. One of the characters has a connection to it. We learn that Robert and Ned have a brotherly history. John Arryn was a father figure to both. John Arryn is the character whom Catelyn told Ned was dead, killed before the story started, or during, or sometime like that, but off page. They haven't seen each other in 7 years. This is in relationship to Robert and Ned. But we learn at the end of the chapter that Robert, the king, is coming for a visit. We also learn through their conversation from a letter from Ben, who is Ned's brother, that the Night's Watch is weakening. And we see this in the prologue, where they are just offed by the others. So we can imagine that that is happening a lot. And they believe it to be Mance Raydar's men, but there are more foul things at play, like the others. About the Tullys, we learn more about the Tullys. The Tullys, Catelyn Stark used to be a Tully. She is from the Tully family. She has Tully blood. We learned a little bit about the Tullys in earlier chapters. They traditionally have red hair and blue eyes, so we can presume that that is how Catelyn looks, although we aren't given that description physically on the pages in this chapter. But they are from River Run in the far south. That is their homeland on the Red Fork of the Trident. Alright, so now we're going to jump into some character overviews. Catelyn and Eddard. Alright, so let's start with Catelyn Stark, who is our viewpoint character. We've already talked about her appearance. It is presumed to be a Tully appearance, but we don't know much more than that. She is of the faith, which we talked about in the religion section of this video. So she believes in the 7 gods, and she remembers the faces of the 7 gods. Now, the very first line in the chapter lets us know immediately that Catelyn Stark feels out of place in Winterfell. Catelyn had never liked this godwood. It's not what she knows. She doesn't like it. At least, maybe not necessarily out of place in Winterfell, but at least out of place in the setting that she was presented to us. It's different from her home. The goods of Winterfell kept a different sort of wood, and that is a typo. That's supposed to be the gods of Winterfell kept a different sort of wood. On page 22, not a garden, but a dark forest. And she worships in a sept in lieu of the god's wood. When talking about Bran and all of their children, we learn that she is always proud of Bran, which is just an interesting thing to note. As a mother, she cares about her children, which is displayed through her conversation. Arya loves the wolf already, and Sansa's trying to be proper about it, but so we see her talk about her kids in a motherly way, which is very important to her character as a mother, the matron of the Stark family. And then we have that she is the daughter of Lord Huster Tully, who is the Lord of River Run. She married Ned in River Run 15 years ago, so they've been married for 15 years. And her sister married Jon Arryn, her sister Lysa, who we'll talk about more in the other characters section. Alright, the next character we're going to talk about is Eddard Stark. We learn that his nickname is Ned, at least that's what Catelyn calls him. We learn that he goes to the Godswood to seek solace, particularly after taking a man's life, given his role, and we already know his stance on dishing out the punishment for the fitting crime and doing it yourself if you sentence a man to death. So he is in the Godswood cleaning his sword and just sort of recuperating from the event. We know that he has blood of the first men, as reference that he is the ancestor of Brandon the Builder. We know that he's a tough father. We see his actions in the first Bran chapter, and we see his comments to Catelyn about their kids. Ned frowned. He must learn to face his fears. He will not be 3 forever, and winter is coming. Here we see those house words in play, but we also see him being very tough on a little kid who is only 3. I don't know what 3-year-old is this tough, but he has to learn to be in this world. We also know that Ned has a blind courage. Who else? Ned lifted eyes, looked down the cool steel length of it. And it will only grow worse. The day may come when I will have no choice but to call the banners and ride north to deal with this king beyond the wall for good and all. He's referring to Mance Rayder here. And the reason I say that he has blind courage here is that he knows that there are other things that exist, especially in his situation, his close association with his brother Ben on the wall. Yet he still assumes that Mance Rayder is the threat. He also assumes that he can defeat Mance Rayder. He has this blind courage that because he is honor bound, he feels that he is correct. So that could be his downfall later on. He also doesn't put faith in signs, which is important when we think about the stag killing the dire wolf, and we later learn that the stag is the sigil of House Baratheon, who just happens to be coming to visit. We also learn that Ned loves Catelyn, but even then he thought first of her. When she delivers him the bad news that his good friend is dead and that Robert is coming to visit, he put all his emotions aside of grief and happiness to see his friend after 7 years just to think about her and what she wanted and how she must be feeling in the moment. So that's just interesting to note that he really does love Catelyn. And we also learn the funny fact that he does not like the Lannisters. Well, if the price for Robert's company is an infestation of Lannisters, so be it. Sorry there. Alright, so some other characters who were mentioned in the section. We learn more Stark names. We learn Arya, Sansa, and Rickon. Although I know we talked about Rickon earlier. Bran said his name, that he was the babe or the baby. We learn more about some closer relatives to the Starks. Jon Arryn, who is unfortunately dead. We don't really get to know him, but he was Ned and Catelyn's brother-in-law, married to Catelyn's sister Lysa, who has now, since he's dead, is returning or has returned to the Eyrie, where Jon Arryn was the lord of. So I guess she's going there to act as a sort of queen or lord regent. Unless women can be rulers in this society, which we have yet to see. We have Catelyn's nephew, Jon, who is Lysa's son. Sorry, not Jon, that's Jon Arryn's, but we don't know Catelyn's nephew's name, but he is the son of Jon Arryn and Lysa. One fun thing I like to mention about Jon Arryn is that if you look at Catelyn and Ned's children, 2 of them, Jon, directly named after Jon, or there has to be some sort of connection there. But then we also have Arya Stark, whose name is so derived from Jon Arryn. Arry, Arya, Arryn is very close, and I wonder if there is some sort of connection there, and given that he is a father figure, it only makes sense. We have Brynden, who is Catelyn's uncle in Knight of the Gate and the Vale. We'll learn more about the Gate and the Vale as we continue to read on. And we have Ben, who is Eddard's blood brother, who is in the Night's Watch. We don't know his position in the Night's Watch, We know that sort of criminals and deserters have gone to the Night's Watch, so I only hope that Benjen is, well, I'm saying Benjen, you guys don't know this full name is Benjen yet, but Ben, we know that he's in the Night's Watch, and that he is a source of information from the Wall. We get some more characters that are mentioned. We get Old Non again. Can't wait to meet her. I bet she's 7. I'm kidding. I know she obviously can't be 7, but wouldn't it just be really funny if this storyteller that everyone keeps talking about and calling Old Non, he's like this 7-year-old girl who's like a little precocious kid, and they just call her Old Non in a tongue-in-cheek way. But we'll meet her soon, hopefully. Can't remember if we do or not. We have the Maesters. We have more evidence that they are learned men. We see another incident where one is given medicinal care. John Aaron is given milk of the poppy by Pycelle to ease his passing. And then we have Lewin sending his swiftest bird to let Ben know that Robert Baratheon is coming. So these are sort of things that the storytellers or the monks or the keepers of knowledge would do in a society such as this one. We learn about the Mad King Aerys II Targaryen. I definitely know we're going to get more information about him, but he's just mentioned so far. And we know that he wanted to kill Robert and Ned, but look at what happened. He definitely lost, because Robert is now the king of the 7 Kingdoms. Then we have the Lannisters of Casterly Rock. Now, Cersei is mentioned specifically, but her brothers are not. But we know that their names are Jaime and Tyrion. She is married to Robert, so she is currently the queen. And then we have that they came late to the aid of Robert Baratheon, and that is why Ned Stark does not like them. We know that they have more children, but the only child who's mentioned of Robert Baratheon and Cersei is Tommen. We have more information on the Green Men, the Isle of Faces, where the Green Men keep their silent watch. So not much information, but we have it. Alright, so now we're going to talk briefly about some themes, topics, and symbols. Sorry that the video is going a little longer than I would have liked it to. Try to keep it at 15 minutes, but we're way over that. I just want to talk briefly about the eyes as they're presented in this chapter. They've come back again. They continue to be important. We have the watching weirwood trees in the Winterfell Godswood. They were old, those eyes, older than Winterfell itself. But the red eyes of the weirwood seemed to follow her as she came. There are darker things beyond the wall. She glanced behind her at the heart tree, the pale bark and red eyes, watching eyes, listening eyes, thinking eyes. It's long, slow thoughts. Now these are just 3 examples, but eyes were all over this section. Eyes are very important to George R.R. Martin or to the story. Hopefully he did that on purpose. And then we have swords. Swords have come up a lot so far, almost in every, not even almost, in every chapter that I've discussed so far, even though this is only the 3rd one. Swords have been crucial. We have the Sword of the Others, and Ice is making its 2nd appearance, where Ned is cleaning him in sacred waters of the Godswood, and water that seems to be surrounding the heart tree of the Godswood. He had a swatch of oiled leather in one hand. He ran it lightly up the greatsword as he spoke, polishing the metal to a dark glow. Now, it is a named sword. It is important to note that a lot of heroes in literature have named their swords. If you think about the Lord of the Rings, for example, what were the names of those swords? I should have done my research. We have Sting. A lot of swords have been named. Oh, one big sword from the Arthurian literature. We have a sword, Excalibur, the sword wielded by King Arthur, the sword that he pulled from the stone. A very famous and classic tale of, knights of the Round Table. So a named sword is particularly important important. And given that his sword is ice, it's the sword that he uses to cut a man's head off, which is a big deal. We know that the sword has continued importance. We also learn that Catelyn has no love for swords, but she could not deny that ice had its own beauty. Again, the sword is coming up in the story. We learn more about the history. Again, history in this section has been very important. The sword has been forged in Valyria before the Doom, during a time when swords were forged with spells and hammers. We get more information about the broken antler. We see Catelyn think about the antler and the dead dire wolf, and that Robert Baratheon is coming. Alright, thank you for sticking around this long. This is the third video that I have done, and I look forward to making more videos with enthusiastic content for you guys. I want to start adding some more of me to the video, so I will probably start doing some some video work of me in the green screen, so that should be fun to play around with. But yeah, these videos are going to keep coming and keep growing, so if you're new here, like, comment, and subscribe. Sorry my voice was really dry this video. I did not drink enough water today. Yeah, please like, comment, and subscribe. That's me. And then click here for my for a link to my Facebook page. Click here to subscribe to me on this channel. Click here to tweet at me, and get at me with your tweets. And click here for my Goodreads. Now, my Goodreads is not really that up to date. I started it many years ago and really haven't done anything with it. But this weekend, I plan to go into it and do some updating. Thank you for watching. This has been Let's Read a Game of Thrones, Chapter 2, the Catelyn Stark first chapter. Have a wonderful evening. This is where a theme song would close out the video. If you made it this far, you get to hear me try to sing. Alright, bye everybody.